Thank you everybody for joining. I see some old faces and some new faces. Always great to see meet new ones and make new old acquaintances. As Ruth said, this is not a promotional event. We're not talking about product here. We're not going to sell you anything. What we're really doing is we're talking to you about what we've learned about social commerce in particular, and the way that consumers want to shop and some of those behavior patterns, what we can learn and what we can take out of that as brands and retailers. So today's event is being recorded. It's about 30 minutes plus Q&A. If you'd like to use the Q&A panel at the bottom, that'd be great. We'll get to the questions at the end. The Q&A is often the best bit about this. So ask your questions, absolutely, give us the really tough ones, or, really challenge us and see what we can do there, because that interactivity, lots of big brain trust on this event. Lots of people here today, lots of great insights from others as well. So jump in and share, please do. And just to answer the inevitable question, copies of the slides and the recording will be available, and we'll tell you how to get those at the end. So just by way of introduction to Simplicity DX, we're basically focused on a problem, which is that social is super important for brands, but unfortunately social shopping experiences often suck. There you go. In a nutshell, that's what we're focused on. That's certainly what we're talking about today. And just about us as a company, relatively new. We conduct primary research into online shopper behavior. I've been analyzing shopper behavior for, I don't know, a long time, probably something in the region of about 20 years, watching it change over time. That's what makes me sound very old. And I also write about that for quite a few publications, and I've been writing for Practical eCommerce, for example, for 10 years, and you can go and read some more stuff there if you want to see what we've been doing over time. Simplicity itself, Simplicity DX develops a platform to optimize shopping journeys at the edge. We're not really going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about consumer behavior and what you can learn and how you can optimize social shopping. Based in San Diego, California, and as you can hear from the English accent, Windsor, UK as well. So what are we going to be talking about today, and what's the focus? Well, so let's think about this. Where do customers actually want to shop in the age of social media? What happens when customers click through to the brand site? What impact do promotions have on experience? How do we fix the product detail page? Does it need fixing? I think it does, but how do we fix it? And in particular for social traffic. And should brands sell on social or not? And under what circumstances should they sell and should they not, etc. And we'll make some recommendations based upon our experience as industry observers and analysts of what customers want, or what they say they want anyway. So social is certainly the biggest opportunity in e-commerce today. Customers are spending 2.5 hours every day there. So we have to be, where our customers are. That's where they want to be. There's this fire hose of traffic to tap into. That sounds fantastic. It's a great place to discover new products. So all is good, right? But it's also not just, is it a big opportunity, but it's also the biggest problem in e-commerce as well, because whilst that's where customers are spending time, and that's where ad budgets, 25% of digital ad budgets this year will be spent on social media advertising. So while we're spending a lot of money there to attract traffic, we do have a challenge, which is how do we convert them and at the same time make it a great experience? And that's not trivial, as you'll see in a moment. But before we tell you anything about all of this, we're going to ask you a couple of questions. In fact, we're going to ask you a single question as a poll, and let's see what our audience says and what you know. So where do customers check out is going to be the question. And there's two ways that you might do that on social media. You might click through and visit the brand's website, that's on the left, or you might actually have your social checkout set out to enable customers to check out in the social platform itself. So Ruth, if you'd like to launch the poll, let's just look at the question. So as a brand, single choice, you can pick one answer. Do you think you should redirect traffic from social to your e-commerce site? Redirect traffic from social to your e-commerce site to check out? Enable customers to check out on the social platform itself? Both, so different approaches for different products, product lines, divisions, or whatever, or not applicable. So there we go. As a brand, do you think you should redirect traffic to the brand site, enable customers to check out on social, or do a bit of both, or not applicable? If you'd like to fill in your answers, that would be great. So Ruth, do you want to call it when you think we're ready to share the results?
Yeah, it looks like everybody has voted, so I'm going to end poll. Thanks, everyone.
What a wonderful audience voting quickly. Right, do you want to share the results?
I will.
There we go. Right, so both, a lot of people, 58% are not sure, thinks we should do both, different approach to different products, or we should do some social checkout and some redirection. So interesting. So let's close that. That's a little taster of where we go before we start sharing data. Okay, so how has shopping changed? Because shopping has undoubtedly changed. And of course, whether you are, in fact, oops, I jumped ahead there slightly. Oops, I made a mess. Whether you are checking out on social or whether you're redirecting to the brand site, the experience isn't good in either scenario. And this is one of the reasons why we said social's broken, we need to fix it, because it's not great either way. Okay, so let's have a little look at that. So what has changed is that in the old days, people used to come direct to the brand site, or they use a search engine to come to the brand site, landing at the homepage, etc. And now, of course, what's happened is that more and more customers are shopping at the edge rather than shopping on the brand site directly. So the journeys are starting at the edge, starting on social, where it's a great place to discover products, but they then typically, if they're clicking through onto the brand site, are going to have a bad experience for a whole combination of reasons, right? So inventory is not synchronized, you lose the campaign context of what you were clicking on, and the landing experiences aren't great. So this is the challenge, right? Now, where do customers actually want to check out is perhaps the next question. So we ran a study of 501 US online shoppers in February of this year. It's available in our State of Social Commerce report, which we'll tell you how to get at the end. We can get you a copy of that. And basically what it says is that 48% of customers think that social is a great place to learn about new products. But when it comes to actually going through the decide and buy process, not just the discover, then 71% prefer to check out on the brand site. In fact, only 13% prefer to buy on the social media platform. And the others are kind of on the fence, don't really mind, right? So it's pretty clear result. Great place to discover, but actually when it comes to decide and buy, then I want to do it on the brand site. Now, when you think about that, that kind of makes sense, right? Because what we know already about the way that consumers buy online is that it's rarely, when you discover a product, one click, buy, bang, done, right? Now, there are certain purchases, that do work that way. You need a new bolt for your washing machine, or, absolutely, you go onto Amazon or wherever, and you find the exact bolt, and you found it, brilliant, buy, done, right? But when it's a much more discretionary purchase, something you've just discovered, a new brand or a new top or whatever it is, then quite often that requires a sequence of visits over time, because there's a decision process, and we need to recognize that decision process probably means looking at multiple products and different brands, different categories, getting comfortable with it before you then press that buy button and go. There's also a timing as well. Not everybody has the money at different times of the month, and you see the conversion rate going up towards the end of the month, where it goes up the closer you get to the end of the month, and when all the bills are cleared, the paycheck's cleared, and the bills are cleared, and there's free money left, at that point, then the conversion rate goes up in particular. So it's important to recognize that there is a decision process, and not all of that decision process happens on social, and that's one of the reasons why you get this. So if we think about why people don't shop on the social platform itself or don't want to, then there are some challenges and some issues, right? So finding products, there are no typically there are no filters and facets. It makes it harder to find the product you want. If there's a social store there, then it may be only a subset of the products, not all the product lines, all these sorts of things, right? So it's still relatively immature. There's also issues with inventory synchronization. Quite often the product that you find advertised or promoted on social is not available on the brand site, or not available, or you can buy it on social, and then there is some sort of problem later on. Returns are problematic. In our study, we found that only 15% of customers actually knew how to return a product which was bought on social. So returns are a major pain in the neck for both the consumer and for the brand, and clearly customers at this point don't really know how to do that. There's also worries about authenticity. Is this a real brand? Is this the same brand or whatever? Then they are maybe nervous about sharing data, which also came out in our study. Obviously, sharing data with social networks. Social networks don't have a great reputation for looking after data and for privacy and some of those sorts of things. There are also issues about out-of-step communications where you've received your product and it says, whoops, with a delay and all these sorts of things where there's a synchronization issue going on. But there's also an emotional part, which is customers actually want the brand experience. Part of that serotonin release you get from shopping, the pleasure of shopping, actually is to have the brand experience. And in some ways that you don't get that on social, whereas you go to the brand site, you get a rich experience and video and media and all sorts of stuff, which is great. And then finally, as we've already touched on, customers not yet ready to buy. I mean, here's a specific example of what can go wrong where you don't have synchronized inventory. So this is a product I bought, the North Face insulated cap. You can see free delivery and only one left. And that should have been a warning sign to me. I should have known better, right? Only one left. No synchronized inventory, going to be a problem. So actually, I then get the order confirmation, which is great, fantastic. I've got that. It was only one and I got it. It's brilliant. Right? And then 2 days later, I get the order cancellation saying, sorry, actually, it's not available. And the reality is that in that 2-day period, it was probably available on the brand site and I could have bought it on the brand site. But the fact that, there was a synchronization issue meant that, ultimately you get frustrated. And experiences like this totally reinforce, where customers want to buy and why that's the case. So where customers want to buy is one half of the coin. What about where brands want to sell? And so the question is, should brands sell on social? And clearly, quite a lot of you were split. When we did our mini poll, you thought there was sort of somewhere in the middle, not quite sure. So first off, I would say that different strategies fit different brands depending upon where you are. There is a sell on social strategy, but you have to be kind of very aware that you won't get any customer data with it, right? So you don't have any consent to contact the customer, you don't know who they are, you can't then go and contact them, follow up and sell them again and again and again. And you want to sell them again and again and again because profitability comes from repeat sales, not from the first sale. At the other end of the scale, you have a much more sophisticated brand, which is basically deciding, okay, we're going to promote on social and then we're going to drive traffic to the brand site, because then we have all of the data on our customers, we control the experience end to end, and therefore, we want to control the experience and we want to control margins and across multiple product lines, channels, geographies, all those sorts of things. And then somewhere in the middle, which is where many of you were when you answered the question, was a bit of mixed mode. Let's do a bit of both, and that could be experimentation, but you also need to recognize that you'll have some of the data, the products that you sold on your own DC store, but you won't have the data or consent from customers where you've then sold through the channel. So, I mean, obviously selling through the channel gets you potentially in a significant volume, but without knowing who the customers are and the ability to then contact them and sell them on an ongoing basis. So it's a trade-off, much like selling on Amazon, and there are lots of lessons learned about why you sell on Amazon and all the things you do and don't do and how you need to manage that. So as a rule, given the fact that most customers prefer to shop on the brand site, 71%, that's most, that's almost 3/4. The rule therefore should be that most brands should direct traffic to the brand site, at least for now, right? But there are 2 exceptions to this rule. Like any rule, it always has an exception. So one is an influencer store and the other is a micro brand. So let me just cover those briefly. So if you imagine an influencer has just done a makeup demonstration, how to do I'm not a makeup person, but how to do your eyeliner, or it's a 20-minute video. At this point, the fan watching or the shopper has not only discovered the product, but they've also gone through the decision process, right? So they've had the experience, they've got the recommendation by an authority figure, they see lots of people saying, oh, I love this in the chat, maybe there's some scarcity going on as well, all those sorts of things happening. And then at that point, yeah, it makes sense to have a buy button there. So if you're a social influencer and you want to diversify into e-commerce, then it makes a whole ton of sense to get customers at that point. And you may be, on a single channel, you may be focused on Instagram, for example. The second thing is with micro brands, if you're a mom and pop shop and you're starting out and you're happy with basically the ability to only sell through one channel, then it makes sense absolutely to maybe tap into Instagram or Facebook or Pinterest, depending upon what kind of business you're doing, and say, okay, that's going to be our stream of traffic. That's where we're going to be focused. You want to buy from us, you buy from us here, and you're shipping from the garage. You haven't got any back office integration to worry about. You've probably got limited numbers of product lines, so it's fairly straightforward to manage. So for micro brands, influencers, sort of it makes a lot of sense. But otherwise, given the way that customers actually want to buy, if you've already got a brand site, that's the way that customers want to buy. It probably makes sense to direct customer to the brand site. But unfortunately, it's not a great experience. Today, when you direct customers from social down to the brand site, it often is a poor experience. And in fact, in our study of 500 odd online shoppers in February this year, 81% complained of poor landing experiences when referred by social channels. And the reason for that is product availability, loss of campaign context. So, what you clicked on isn't seemingly what you get. It looks different. It's kind of different. I don't understand how that works. Maybe there's a broken link, or somehow there's something not intuitive. A whole combination of problems, which ultimately result in significantly less revenue generating when traffic like this lands on the product detail page. Fewer pages, 79% higher bounce rate, and half the conversion rate than if that traffic had landed on any other page. So the product detail page is a problem, right? It's not a great place for landing traffic because you're only getting a 1.5% conversion rate, and as a result, there's a big problem there. And you can see this very easily and very quickly in lots of different places. You go pick a brand and go have a look on Instagram or Facebook, any one of them, and you'll find that very often you see these kinds of experience. So if you look at the out of stock experience one there, this is a featured story for a particular brand. You click through, this is their lead story, the product they're promoting the most, it's prominent, etc. You click through and nothing is available in any size, right? Yet it's being promoted. Now, I as a consumer have an expectation, not alone, have an expectation that when a product is promoted, because you're promoting, you're spending money on it, right? Because you're promoting it, it should be available, correct? Right? But it isn't. Very, very frustrating. Equally, the second one, you've got a sort of 404, so a broken link. And on the final one, maybe I like the top or I like the jacket that she's wearing, and there aren't links on them. There are no links. It's just, I can't even find that product. So actually going and finding it is a problem. And all of these were one brand in one day. So it's not hard to find. These experiences are extremely common. And the impact of those is quite significant. If you look at the fact that 25% of traffic today lands directly on the PDP and it gets half the conversion rate, you work it out backwards and you basically come out and say, okay, there's a 14% revenue hole there. If that PDP could convert in the same way, sorry, product detail page, that slipped. If that product detail page could convert in the same way as any other page does on the site, then all of a sudden you'd be 14% more revenue, which is a big number, right? Huge number. So we should also touch base on promotions as well, because promotions are part of the problem. In fact, we might say a systemic, one of the oldest problems in retail. You promote something or you give it visibility, that drives more traffic, and then as a result, it sells more than perhaps you expected, or maybe the person choosing to do the promotion is not the same person that bought the inventory, and that ends up with poor user experience and user frustrations. There's nothing more frustrating than seeing an ad, getting excited about a product, and then find you can't actually buy it, right? It's very, very frustrating. And in fact, in our study, we have an astonishing figure. I've been doing research for, 25 years or so, and you never get 98% of consumers think anything, right? There's always more, right? But in our study, we found probably post-pandemic effects, 98% of consumers had an out of stock or product availability issue in the last 90 days. I guess it's part pandemic, but clearly this is very, very common issue. And promotions are a big part of this as well. So we have to think about what the effect is when we do that on the experience, right? It's great for driving traffic and footfall, but ultimately, do we just, annoy our customers? Then that's not very helpful in the process. The reason, of course, that the product detail page is a problem, and we end up with this, is basically because it was designed for a different era where most of the traffic was coming down to the top of the funnel, right? and it landed on the homepage, and then it went from there. Okay, explored, understand what the brand does, go down to category page, look at different categories, maybe I'll shop around a little bit, and ultimately I end up on a product detail page where the focus should be, add to cart. Right, and lots of optimization has gone into this funnel process, so that add to cart button is like easy, it's compelling, it's the only button you should press, add it to the cart, right? Because we want to add it to the cart, and that's very important, right? And by the course of the time they get to the add to cart, 89% of the traffic is gone anyway, right? Only 11% of traffic that lands on the homepage actually gets to the cart in the first place doing this process. But it's a qualification, allow people to shop and get to that decision process if at all possible. Now, what happens is when most of the traffic actually bypasses the home page and comes into a category page or a product detail page, is that of course those pages aren't great, for landing traffic. And you can see that, in particular, if you stick with the product detail page here, you've got sophisticated targeting of messaging going on social, right? So you can target different, motivations, all the rest of it, all landing on one common page, showing very different imagery, maybe not showing the correct product or the product variant, showing different models, and somehow the experience just gets lost, right? So how do we fix the product detail page? What can we do about that? Given that it's been optimized so heavily? I mean, the first thing you can do, which is a simple fix, is whenever you're promoting a product, if you're using a style image on social, you can put the style image into your PIM, and then make sure that that is the featured image for that particular product. So when somebody then goes and looks for it on the site, they can at least find it. Whereas if not, it looks like a different shop because it's not a style image anymore. It's got a white background and it's a cutout or whatever, it looks very, very different. Second thing is show variants and alternates. So this is kind of a little bit different from the logic of we've optimized it, so just add this product to the cart. Don't distract them, right? Get them to press that button, right? Because once they add to cart, there's a minor commitment there, and they're more likely to buy having added it to the cart. Somebody who returns to a site having added a product to a cart is 54 times more likely to make a purchase than a first-time visitor. Returning visitors 9 times more likely. So getting those little steps as you go down the funnel is really important and gives a little commitments, those micro commitments. So show variants and alternates allow people to then explore. Given that people are landing here, then clearly that's an issue. Now you could, if you didn't want to mess with your product detail page because it's so heavily optimized really around the cart and getting that add to cart, and you've run A/B tests over many, many years to prove that that works best, right? Don't distract them. Then you could create a variant of your product detail page, which is more for landing traffic, and that's a whole nother way to do it. Much more effort to do, but you could do that. And finally, you might also think about lengthening the page with other navigation links. And this is really about, it has a 79% higher bounce rate than all other pages on the site. So on that basis, can we get the next click? And this is, if you like, sort of little clickbait, if you like, things to sort of encourage somebody to click through. So let's sort of begin to wrap up, and then we get to Q&A. And if you haven't asked any questions yet, we'd love to get you to ask questions. Come on, ask those tough questions for us. So 3 takeaways for brands. So number 1, online shoppers like social media for discovering products, but prefer brand sites for buying products. That's certainly the way it's a very strong, clear result. Brands also benefit from redirecting traffic to the e-commerce store with full control of the customer experience and ownership of customer data. Customer data ownership is critical for customer profitability, because you don't make any money on the first sale to a new customer. And I'll come back and touch on that a little bit later on and give you some more reading material on that if you're interested. So landing experiences need urgent attention. More than 8 out of 10 shoppers complaining about poor landing experiences from social when coming onto the brand site. So it's a very hit and miss affair. It represents a massive revenue leak, 14% of revenue. Fixing these problems will deliver disproportionate returns, right? Because plugging a leak is always easier than trying to find a whole new segment of customers. Inventory levels of promoted products need monitoring. We've seen how promotions drive increases in traffic and create knock-on availability issues, and customers have an expectation that products that are on promotion will be available. So sort of 3 quick fixes to think about and 1 mindset change. So first of all, think very carefully about which products to promote on social. So for example, the hat that I tried to buy, there was only 1 left. It's a low-cost item with free shipping. maybe it's a hot style item lots of people want. You're going to end up with problems as a result, customer frustrations as a result. So think carefully about it. Don't promote low stock, fast moving items on social. Think very carefully about where you're going to direct the traffic, right? If you can't change your product detail page, too much hassle, think carefully about where to put them. If it's a long running promotion, can you set up a landing page, for example? Because that would be a better bet than sending them to PDP where most are going to bounce out. Monitor products on promotion for availability. You can pause promotions, and if you do so or redivert the budget to somewhere else where those products are available, you'll increase return on ad spend and you'll increase customer satisfaction as well. The overall experience goes up. Have a think about rethinking your product detail page. Make sure this is not a dead end for traffic coming from the edge, coming in from social, and that it's delivering a good experience. Customers don't want to arrive and then bounce off. It just it's not they're wasting their time, right? So give them a much better experience if you can. So the mindset shift really is about from driving footfall, we're going to use promotions, on social just to get people to the site, to how can we deliver a better brand experience, and then ultimately how can we deliver repeat sales, and repeat sales being the key to e-commerce profitability. So that means kind of capturing data, controlling the experience, helping them to make that decision to buy, and helping them to then find it when they can come back in, and maybe over a sequence of visits over time, how they can then get more comfortable with the brand or the product until the point is they're ready to purchase. Now, repeat sales undoubtedly are really key. And how you might get that is you might think, well, actually, the way I'm going to get repeat sales, in particular, if customers don't buy at the outset, is to enable us to sort of remarket to them. Well, be careful. So I just stumbled across this earlier today. I put a blue box where the brand was, and I thought, oh my goodness, I cannot enter the site. This was landing on the site, right? From Google. I cannot enter the site without entering my email address. What do? It took me about 20 seconds to actually spot there's a little X in the top right hand corner that allows you to close the interstitial layer. I thought I had to enter an email. I was at the point ready to bail, right? So be careful, right? This is not a great experience, right? So yes, you do want to identify customers if you possibly can. Okay, so beginning to wrap up, we'll go to questions. So first off, further reading. If you'd like a copy of our Simplicity DX State of Social Commerce report, this is the latest data on social commerce, was conducted 501 online consumers in February of this year, published in, I think, April, so it's about a month old, something like that. There's a download link there, but equally, I think there's a little question when you sort of sign out. If you fill in the questionnaire at the end, one of the questions is, would you like a copy of this? And we'll just tick say yes, and we'll send you a copy. Or don't want to copy the slides, same place to get the slides, tick yes, I want to copy the slides, do in the same way. So that's the latest data. And then this is a very old article, a golden oldie, if you like. I've written for Practical E-commerce for 10 years, something like that. There are many articles up there, but this one talks about profitability in e-commerce. I did some analysis really looking at the cost of customer acquisition and what happens if you only get one sale. And the killer phrase down the bottom, 27% of conversions that come from returning customers generate 41% of the revenue and 100% of the profits. So since I wrote that, which is some years ago, cost of customer acquisition has gone through the roof. It's probably more than doubled. Right? So the problem is even worse than it was then. What it basically says is that it's important to capture customer data because we want to sell them on the second, third, and fourth, at which point the cost of customer acquisition can be amortized across multiple sales, and all of a sudden the profitability kicks in. Okay, so that is a rapid sort of romp into the state of social commerce, why it's broken and what you can do about it. Let me throw it back to Ruth and let's go over to Q&A.
Right, thank you, Charles. That was brilliant as usual. Let's have a look. We've got a couple of really great questions actually, and I'm going to start off with a really tough one. Hope you don't mind. So how should product detail pages cope when the customer is not ready to buy? Do you want me to repeat it?
No, I think I've got that. So it's a good question. As we know, if you get a 3% conversion rate overall on the site, about 0.5% from a first-time visitor, and then it goes up, 9 times more likely to get a sale from a repeat visitor, and as I said earlier, 54 times more likely by the time they get to the shopping cart. So clearly it may take more than one visit, and that is definitely a problem in social, because it's difficult to find the start of that flow, to go back and find the start again, right? Because it's a notorious problem. As soon as you've left social, you go back to the next day, finding the post you were looking at yesterday, it's gone, right? So so actually getting them into the brand site, getting them to explore the brand site, understand where it is and how to navigate it, that's important. You can, of course, remarket, and hence that site, which was trying to capture the email address perhaps overly aggressively, that's an important part of remarketing. Showing people in particular pictures, images of products which they've previously viewed, works a treat. Absolutely, it's one of those things you should absolutely have on your site. Now, if you've seen this before, because the brain is visual, right? It's why we recognize people before we can remember their name. It's a different part of the brain. We remember pictures, we work on pictures, which is why a big picture of something you've seen before is a great way to then hook them back in again. So you can do remarketing that way. But you obviously need to capture an email address, and you need to get consent to do that. Your cookie consent probably allows you at the moment to retarget using retargeted advertising to get them back to the site, but that won't last very long because there's all sorts of privacy stuff happening with cookies. And if you're in Europe or the US or Canada, increasingly it's becoming problematic. There's an article that came out, I think, yesterday from the Irish government, basically saying, real-time bidding is the most massive data leak ever, and that on average a US citizen, I think, has their data leaked 400 times a day because of the real-time bidding process as these ads go around the internet. So privacy regulators are clamping down on that and saying ad industry got to change. So, but at least in the short term, getting them back to the site is the key, and therefore remarketing, retargeting can work very well. The other thing you can think about is just making it easy so that when they do come back to the site, if they come back to the homepage, they can very easily find what they're looking at before. And that's the simple technique of actually showing something somewhere, previously browsed, which is done on a cookie. It's all first party. So as long as you've got cookie consent, then you can do that very easily. Okay, great question, by the way.
We got time for another?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, we have a specific one on Africa. The state of social commerce in Africa, which may be best us getting direct back to that person.
Yeah, I would say I don't know actually, because we haven't studied it. Our study was in the US, but yeah. So okay.
If that person wants to email me direct, I'll see what I can find for you. I'm very happy to try and help. And then another one about what are the opportunities available for startups to solve some of these issues? Is this relevant just to major brands, or is this are these lessons relevant to startups as well?
So if you are a new brand starting out, then I think you've got some choices actually. If you're brand new, you haven't done anything at all, then clearly you could just start selling on social. Limited number of products. It's a great way to test things out, right? Very, very low commit. You can just see whether it works, but you got to recognize that you're going to outgrow it, right? So it's a great place to start, but ultimately, if you're a D2C startup, for example, so direct-to-consumer startup, you're going to want to control the experience. It's all about delivering a great experience, and it's very hard to do that on social today because of all the problems we talked about. So you need to build your own brand site and basically need to direct traffic to your brand site within a very short space of time. As soon as you want to promote on more than one channel, having kind of done your little test, then at that point it sort of makes sense, I think, to then set up a brand site with something like Shopify. Again, not difficult, not complicated, and will get you an awful long way down that path.
Okay. And one's coming through chat actually saying, is there data on the difference in social shopping behavior attitudes for customers of different age groups? Again, Charles, this is something I've got lots of research on, so I can pick up direct, but I don't know if you've got any comment on that. So for example, Gen Z, and different groups.
So in fact, in our study, we looked for that, and because we've got it all broken down by different age groups and the like, and the patterns and trends are not as strong as you would expect. You know, I was expecting to see, oh no, you know, absolutely Gen Z are going to be like this, and you know, the oldies are going to be like that, and it's nowhere near as clear cut as that. So there are some patterns, and we can try and dig out some of the data for you and let you know, but I don't think there is a really strong pattern that says, yeah, younger shoppers, absolutely, they're gonna check it on social, and that's just the way it is. It's not as simple as that.
And if I can sneak in one more, because this is again a very intriguing question. Live stream shopping keeps becoming more common and more popular. What should one look out for when building a product around that?
Building a product around live streaming.
And live streaming, so a product specifically for live streaming. I don't know if you've got any advice on that, or we can get back.
Yep, there's a little bit in the report actually on live streaming. 16% of customers in the US have bought a product from live streaming. It also talks about, I can't remember the data off the top of my head, about numbers that, you know, are interested, some that haven't tried it or have tried it, those sorts of things. The number one thing that springs to mind is inventory. Inventory is critically important. Mind you, inventory is always important when it comes to e-commerce. It's perhaps the hardest bit of the whole thing, right? It's the bit that's sort of below the covers that nobody really talks about. But inventory is really the big challenge here with live streaming. And then secondly, the potential volumes. Obviously, in the Far East, we've seen some billion-dollar live stream, you know, events, enormous revenues, enormous volumes. So many e-commerce platforms cannot deal with spike volumes like that. So you need to be able to handle, you know, that enormous spike and sort of maintain your real-time inventory picture to make sure that customers can actually buy it at the moment. I mean, that's all obviously planning for success. It's a nice problem to have, but just be aware that if you start with something like Shopify, you may actually run out of steam quite quickly because of that.
Okay, should we close on a future gazing one?
Okay, last question, and then Ruth, to get you to think about it, I want you to decide which you think the best question was, and we're going to give them a quick sort of, you know, well done for the best question. Okay, so give us the future question. Okay,
do you think the preference for buying on an e-commerce site will remain as social commerce grows?
That's a great question, and in fact, I've talked to a lot of industry analysts, you know, the Gartners and Forresters around this topic too, and I think the answer is, at the moment, certainly yes. And the reason for that is because, you know, I mean, this is of course the third attempt at doing this by the social platforms, right? It's not the first go around. We had a couple more, and they didn't work last time at trying to do the social checkout. The reason the social platforms really want to do it is they want the conversion data, but ultimately, you know, you are taking a choice, which is, am I happy to give up my consent to then market to this customer in return for an anonymous sale? And it's the same question really that brands face with Amazon. You know, that you may feel like you need to be there in order to sort of maintain market share or get the volume, and volume means that you can, you know, buy product more cheaply and those sorts of things. But don't think it's going to drive profitability. You know, if you look at the Amazon experience and play it forward, you know, you've got the race to the bottom. It's very expensive. You know, the margin isn't great. It doesn't work for a lot of products. You can't launch products that way. You get delisted. You know, what happens about fake products? All these sorts of things when an out of stock happens. So there's a ton of other issues that go with that to make that work. Also think about it, if you're a brand, how are you going to then maintain all of these stores on all of these social platforms, right? And that you know, that's a lot of work to do to maintain that. So I'm not sure it makes sense until the social platforms really start to take inventory management seriously, which is the sort of the messy bit that actually makes e-commerce work. Then I think it's unlikely really that it's going to change, unless consumers suddenly decide, oh no, actually, you know, it works really well. But until they solve that inventory management issue and all those inventory synchronization issues we talked about, then the experience isn't going to be great, and the majority of consumers will ultimately continue to prefer to shop on the brand site. But it's a great question, and we'll keep tracking it, and you know, we'll let you know if it changes. Okay.
Okay, so you've put me on the spot and asked me which is my question of the day. Is that right? Okay, well, I don't mean to offend anyone because I think they're all brilliant questions. But I would go for, how should product detail pages cope when the customer is not ready to buy?
Okay, great one. Great one.
And can I tell you why?
Go on then.
I think the research shows that there's tremendous potential when they land on the page to improve the product detail page, but we cannot forget that they're not always ready to buy. So I think we need to look at those two sides of the coin and really optimize that page for all the different types of consumers that land there.
Great stuff. Okay, great question. Well, thank you very much for asking that question to the others. It was really interesting. As I said, it's always the Q&A is always a great part. So thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the attention.